And one of the things we want to talk about is this another word that gets buzzed around a lot in my dialogues. I hear people say, got to understand the risk appetite of people. And we consume that words, but I really don't know, how do we know what a risk appetite is? It just a nebulous concept? How do you get a feel of what the risk appetite is?
I think you get to experience that when you make people feel uncomfortable.
Yes, yeah.
When you push them a little bit further than they expected they could be pushed, well, you're actually then increasing their appetite, right? Because they might have thought this was where I was content with my risk. Actually, I'm ready to you just edge them that little bit further past, and you've just pushed them past where they thought that risk appetite actually sat. So for me, you fall back on your business acumen a lot as a leader around, what are the real risks versus the perceived risk in whatever it is you're trying to do. Now, obviously, you've got the usual fiduciary responsibilities of your company. You've got the supporting of your customers or your clients, whichever industry you're in. So you have those real specific requirements. And in previous roles I've had, safety was number one, right? So immediately, with no question, you knew exactly which one to hold up first. And sometimes as technology leaders, for us to then be able to work out which boundary we want to push, you've got to go back to the risk profile of the organisation to then be able to work out where you're actually going to start to push the risk. Because I think it's easy to be risk adverse, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
The other buzzword, because it's safe, it's comfortable, it's what we've always known, but not dissimilar to approaching AI as a different technology paradigm. Like, you cannot even apply the same thinking or methodology that we've ever applied to anything else in the past. You can't then apply the same risk that you would have applied in the past. So you've got to continue to evolve what it means for your organisation and then start to apply that back into where you want to take people. So as I said, I knew some fundamental risks and I knew the boundaries that I would never push past. And of course, in some cases, they're ethical, moral. You've got all of those usual fiduciary ones. So you've got the status quo ones that will never shift. There's a few others that you can. So you could, risk a little bit of your revenue in this space to see if it's going to make a bit different over here. Or you can risk, someone's preferred style of working in this space just to give them a little bit of a taste of what it might be over here. In both circumstances, you're making people feel uncomfortable, including yourself, but you're actually moving the organisation to a different place just little bit by little bit.
And are you finding those risks are articulated, or are they just understood rather than, people have sort of common agreement that these are the risks without people specifying, no, this is number one, number two, number three? I
think in quite mature organisations, they're actually specified. Case in point, safety number one, well, zero harm. That's an easy risk to look at, and therefore everything cascades to that particular spot. But when there's a bit of blurred line, this is where you actually rely on your risk committees to actually help you think through a particular course of action that you may want to take, or a particular path that you want to test. And you do that in a way that allows the risk committee to inform you of all the things that you might not be able to see, because not one of us can make a decision about the risk profile of an organisation. We actually do need a group of people looking at it from different angles to help. So I think in the more mature organisations, it's pretty robust in the way that
there's like a risk register and stuff like that you're referring to and all that.
Well, it's more than there's a whole risk management kind of committee internally. So they would meet you'd have your set risks. So tech would come and you come with your lens of your area. So it might be quality, might be tech, might be marketing, could be sales, like whoever, each representative comes into that risk committee with a set of core reporting requirements and then risks that others may not have seen. So I think through that process, you're able to say, I've got this idea. Someone tell me what I'm not seeing if I want to approach it. And then you get that great risk committee dialogue around, actually, here are the things that we would see from our position. And then you're able to take that forward in a very consistent and very, I think, informed way.
Well, I'm also hearing there, Angela, the importance of cultivating allies at your level in different parts of the business. So it's not all selling up to the top. It's actually building a groundswell of support for you that goes up. I don't know if that's a valid observation or not.
No, I actually say to my mentors or mentees and people that I coach, it's great to look up and cultivate relationships there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But who are you taking with you when you step up into these roles? Who are those trusted advisors that don't necessarily, like, you don't want them to be the same as you. You don't want like-minded people stepping up with you. You want people who have this respect and credibility that will actually debate in a very mature way an idea or an approach. And, at times you will agree to disagree, and you'll take the path that you need to take. But by cultivating the relationships up, across and down, it's incredibly important, because as you live, you're taking people with you. And that's incredibly important. People forget that at some point, each one of the people that might be sitting at manager level right now may actually be leading those companies at some point in time. So who are they wrapping around them as they move?
Yeah. And I like the point you specifically said, down as well. You've got to people below you've got to come up on that journey. You've got to sell down as well. So they're your supporters, because they'll probably implement what you do anyway.
It's the fellowship that you create. And I often say to people that leadership shadow is a really important term, because it can be good or it could be bad. And for me, the real good test is the followers that you cultivate on your journey. And to me, that's the impact in the good leadership shadow.
Well, one thing we also talk about, one of the big challenges that people talk to me about, Angela, is this sense of prioritization, especially with budgets being cut. There's so many good, worthy projects out there that you could be working on. But with your resources, how do you optimize them? How do you determine where best to apply what you've got? What's your thoughts on that?
It requires structure to start off with, because you don't have a single point of understanding across the organization of your strategic intent and actually where you want to be focused, then you're unable to prioritize throughout the organization. And what you find, if you've not put the structure and the governance around it, you may have one resource who's expended 20 times across projects in the organization. So for me, it was not only putting in place governance that was from each of the various business areas up into the board, but it actually was able to shape the resource burden in the organization as well, because then you're able to see the person's name, and you can actually see the people that you're applying to that particular program and how often they're pulled. And you actually get, at the end of it, an FT equivalent for that person. Well, what a great way to say, actually, we're overburdening one person. Is this a skill set we need to be doubling down on? So it provides that level of view. But similarly, as you start to filter up, you go, okay, if you had to choose two things, if all you could focus on was two things, what's your prioritization process? So you allow the groundswell to occur. But then obviously when you get to the top, there's still 50 projects that you're looking at, programs that you're looking at. So then it's actually, we can do 5. We can do 5 exceptionally well. What is going to be our score by which we actually measure each one of them by? And it'll be different for each organization. But I've seen it work, and I've seen it work really well when you put the structure and the governance around it. Again, it's a bit like, that when we started the conversation, some of this stuff is not exciting or new, but it makes such a foundational difference and an accelerator once you actually get that in place and start the process.
Well, it's like all good governance. It's seamless in some ways, but and you don't really sense it's happening to you, but it actually makes a better place. It's like walking the street and all that sort of stuff. If you've got the governance right, everyone feels safe.
And it's a positive tension between the two. I mean, ultimately, you can be overgoverned to a point of stifling the organization. So there is a tension that you need to get right. And I think once you find what that rhythm looks like, you just need to keep revisiting it too, because as you get new people into the organization, your not only your risk, but your strategy and your governance processes will actually evolve along with where the organization's going as well. So it's not even a set and forget.
A final thing I want to explore with you, we're talking progressive technology strategy. How do you bring idea? I mean, the classic over the last 12 months has been generative AI, which has just gone gangbusters in people. Everyone's talked about it, but actually nobody's really done much with it. So how do you sort of entice or cultivate new technologies in the business, which if you've been in IT for a long time, you know the release one is usually something to avoid. You want to wait till others have been the guinea pigs and then you go. But how do you satisfy that aspiration for the business that feels this is something we got to harness, but you put some guardrails around it, I suppose?
I actually think it all comes down to what problem are you trying to solve. I mean, it's so easy to chase after the shiny object and really, focus on that new buzzword or new piece of tech or new innovation. But unless you're legitimately being able to link it to solving a problem or accelerating the organization, then you're not going to get any buy-in whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so I found in my experience is just park the tech for a minute, have the person in the room that understands. For example, Gen AI and the difference that will make to, everything that we do, free us up to be more human than we ever had before. But ultimately, we need to look at the problems that it should solve in the organization and what that then does for the changing shape of the organization. So for me, simple, come back to the problem and then allow the person to talk through the problem in different ways with the expert in the room on, say, Gen AI, for an example.
Yeah, no, I'm hearing what you said. We can get enamored by the how exciting a technology looks, but unless it's solving a business problem, people are spending money to get some sort of outcome. It's foolhardy to follow it. But so it's looking for problem areas so start with that and then think where the technology applies.